We'll also be discussing how Tadej Pogacar has become the first winner of the Tour de France on disc brakes.
Oh, he didn't though, did he?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, he didn't.
Welcome to the video. We're going to GCN Tech. I'm going to do a intermittent debate here, and we're going to listen to some good things and bad things GCN Tech's go. Let's listen to up. Actually, I think that we're going to get to the crux of. We'll skim through here. This is going to be the rim brake, disc brake talking point here. Now, we do remember that Tadej did win the Tour de France riding both disc brakes and rim brakes at certain stages. He won, was it 3 stages with rim brakes when it really mattered. He used rim brakes when he couldn't afford to lose any more time. He did get a 3.5 minute bonus that day in the cold weather when Carapaz and the rest just didn't like that cold weather. Carapaz and JV, they're skinnier riders. They don't have as much body fat as they do as Tadej, so they suffered in the cold, it seemed like. Whereas in the hot weather, the time gaps were very, 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 very minimal. So that's what we want to keep in the context there. He did get a 3.5 minute time gap, but it was in spite of the extra weight on the bike. All right, so Tadej on that day was just untouchable. Had he been riding the 6.8 kilo Colnago, which he used in subsequent stages, then the time gap maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes, you know what I mean? So it's like, I could jump on my gravel bike and blow 99% of people off the road. You know, 99% of cyclists out there, recreational cyclists, 99% I could blow on my gravel bike. Doesn't mean gravel bike's faster than road bike. It does it. You know, obviously I'm fitter than most people. Does not sound arrogant. That's just a fact. And Tadej on that day was just fitter than other guys. Let's get to the video.
The stage that he won the most time, got right, stage 8, took 3:25 out of his GC rivals, was in the rain in the Alps in France. He was on disc brakes.
But that's just...
As I mentioned, the time deficit on a lighter bike would be even better. You know, he would have opened up a bigger Mandingo gap with a lighter bike, lighter wheels. The wheels he's got here, they're probably going to be about 1,500 grams once you add the rotors on there. Yeah, maybe even more. Maybe 600 grams once you add the rotors on there. With the rim brake, the rotors built in, the disc built into the wheel, into the rim, and so you can have a super light. His Campag tubulars are about 1,210 grams. So you're talking 300-400 grams difference in rotation mass, just right there. Plus slow wheel changes, a paranoia of getting a bike change, stuff up, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, just in terms of pure weight, no anxiety, wheel change anxiety, bike change anxiety that can weigh on your neurohormonal facilitation there. Just in terms of weight, what is that? 300, 400, 500 grams. Actually, about 500 grams. 6.8 versus 7.3 his bike. What is 500 grams over that 35k breakaway, whatever it was? 500 grams up the hills? No, maybe it's half 30 seconds, maybe it's 3 minutes. Who knows? It's definitely a bonus. Let's listen.
Just one example.
Yeah, but you agree that he won. Tadej Pogacar won the Tour de France.
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that.
Do you agree that Tadej Pogacar did use disc brakes?
Yes, yeah, I agree with that.
Do you agree that Tadej Pogacar crossed the finish line in Paris using disc brakes?
Yeah, but you're missing out.
Okay.
Obviously, Ollie, the guy in the grey shirt, he rides rim brakes on his personal bike. When he has a choice, he goes rim brake road. That is true. Tadej did roll into Paris for the GC riders in the yellow jersey, often just it's a product display day. And so, yeah, he used disc brakes on a flat, dry stage in the Champs-Élysées, just rolling in. It's just a protocol day, a parade day for the non-sprinters, and he's riding a disc brake bike. You know, that's just what they do. You know, Colnago wants to sell disc brake bikes. UAE, correct me if I'm wrong, UAE, the team own Colnago now. The frames are made in China, they're shipped to Italy, maybe finished there, and then they get spread around the world. But they obviously want to, you know, this is the best of both worlds here. This is like Colnago, UAE profit wet dream right now. They've got the disc brake coverage and the rim brake coverage. It's just like, they got fingers in both holes, all holes, so it's just done deal. Very, very smart marketing. Very, very smart.
You're missing out a significant
Tadej
bit of
Pogacar won the Tour de France using disc brakes. That's the end of this week's show. See you next week.
It's not. I've got a lot more to come about this.
The banter is real. Bring it on.
Well, the reality is that he actually won on both rim brakes and disc brakes using the advantages of each system. And we understand.
Just correction, Tadej didn't, there was no advantage for Tadej. Tadej is a guy who was recorded at 97k an hour down the mountain on his rim brakes. Like, this is a guy who takes incredible risks and who doesn't need disc brakes to go down the hill. In fact, disc brakes at this level is actually more dangerous. I'll tell you why. The tyres they're using, Carapaz uses like a 22mm tubular. Richie Port down that photo, it looks like a 22mm tubular. Tadej is today, I call him Tadej, that's the Aussie way we say today. He's using, very, like maybe 25mm tubular, maybe even smaller. And so when you're doing like, 90, 80, 70, 100k an hour down a hill, and you got your disc brakes, you're like, well, the disc brakes aren't that consistent. Anyone who's ridden road disc knows down a mountain the consistency is not there like it is with rim brake. With rim brake, you grab the lever, you know what's going to happen. With disc brake, the caliper might overheat, and you got to grab it at 90k an hour. You can crash. We saw Mohoric have a mad crash with his disc brakes locked up too much. He's like, what happened then? Bang, slammed in. He could have died, man. Disc brakes at this level are definitely dangerous, and I think they should be banned, or rim brakes should be banned. I really think the disc brakes should be banned because they're just so sketchy at this level. They haven't been perfected yet. Just ask Chris Froome. Watch his video from February. Let's listen on.
Understand that Tadej Pogacar is actually a little bit of a weight weenie and is really into the setup of his bike.
Yeah.
What professional cyclist, especially a GC rider, isn't a weight weenie? That's why they prefer rim brake. If the UCI abolished the 6.8 kilo weight limit, how many pros would ride disc brake? They would just be like sponsors, Specialized, Trek, Cannondale. What the fruit are we doing with these heavy 6, 7 kilo, 8 kilo bikes, Cervelo S5, 8.1 kilo, Wout Van Aert? They'd be spewing. They'd be like, what is this tank doing here? Imagine if they UCI dropped it to 6 kilos, we would see disc brakes obliterated from the market, the World Tour. We would. Oh, you can get a 6 kilo disc brake bike. You know how flexy that's going to be? Do you know how many spokes the wheel's going to break? Like, it's just going to be so flexy. It's going to crash so easy in the slightest Peloton pile up. You can get a 6 kilo disc brake bike. It's going to cost you a ton, and it's going to crack so easy at the World Tour level. The power output, it's going to be flexy noodle city.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
Noodles are good to eat, but not to have a bike frame characteristic noodly. Not good.
He does see the advantages and disadvantages of both systems. Yeah. But we reached out to Colnago to find out some more information about Pogacar's setup and his bikes.
Now remember, Colnago, all these bike sponsors, all these bike brands sponsor GCN. They pay for marketing, etc. So you can't really trust what GCN says. That's not a diss. That's their job. Their marketing company. Now they put out some great tutorials on how to fix bikes, parts, and adjust your derailleurs and stuff like that. And that's fantastic. I think that's the true gift that GCN bring to the table is the bicycle mechanics tips. But in terms of marketing, it's like, man, it's just getting spiels. It's like same with cycling tips or bike radar. It's just the same industry. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and it's just, and these days it's just disc brake nonsense, road disc nonsense.
And they sent us some information on it, and broadly speaking, he used 3 different bike configurations during the tour, all built around his V3 RS frame set, and these are as follows. So his first setup is with disc brakes and tubeless wheels. They're the Bora Ultra WTO wheels that we used on the Dream
Ride.
Good,
aren't they? Yeah.
I wonder if they're hookless. If they're hookless, I don't think they would be, but you're putting hookless carbon, like that's just like, that's litigation waiting to happen. A hookless road rim. That would have to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. That would be like using carbon fiber pedal spindles. It would be like using like drilling holes out of your carbon fiber bars or something. Just be absolutely hookless carbon rim. We're going to see some mad recalls and mad litigation payouts. Mark this space, and hope that doesn't happen, but it's going to happen because hookless, blowing tires off rims, tubeless. It's just so stupid. Zip, whoever, Giant, what are you thinking?
Really nice wheels. He uses that on flat and rolling terrain. Then on hillier terrain and mountainous stages that don't finish with a summit finish, such as stage 8, where he took most of the time that won him the Tour de France, 3 minutes.
Look how easily he rode away from Carapaz. Carapaz obviously having a bad day that day, and so was everybody else. Like, he was just on another level that day. Really does well in the cold and wet. Takes crazy risks on the descent. Doesn't even touch the brakes, hardly, you know what I mean? Discs are even more dangerous in the wet because, again, you got that small contact patch. Oh, I ride 40 mil tires in my disc. Yeah, that's 40 mil versus a 25 mil. Huge difference. Huge difference. 25 mils aren't designed for disc brake bikes. They're designed for calipers because the contact patch is so small. And when you have the inconsistent disc brake grab, and especially hydro, it's just crash city. Look what happened to all the riders last year's Tour de France.
25 seconds over his rivals. He uses disc brakes again, but switches the wheels out to make the bike a bit lighter and uses tubs. So he uses the 50mm Bora ones.
As opposed to 35s.
Yeah.
Interesting. But
Every gram matters.
then he has his third bike, so arguably what I think is the bike that he won the Tour de France on. So that uses rim brakes, and then it still uses the Campag Bora Ultra wheels, the 50mm ones, but these are tubular, not tubeless. And he uses this bike for mountaintop finishes, so summit finishes, such as on the Col de Portet.
Yes, but he did ride the majority of the Tour and the majority of the stages on disc brakes.
But he finished at the top of the mountains on the rim brake bike.
Crossed the finish line on disc brakes.
Yeah, we all know I'm right.
I'm right.
I'm right.
The interesting thing here...
They make some good points, but again, just, what would Tadej choose if he had the choice? I guarantee you, every single World Tour rider will choose rim brakes. One, the obvious one, faster wheel changes. If you get a flat tire, you can get one from the Mavic Neutral Spares, blah, blah, blah. You don't need a freaking power drill to take your wheel out, and then if you're quicker, your through axle like binds or whatever, like Alaphilippe had from last year in the Tour de France, and it's just every single pro World Tour rider would choose rim brakes for that very reason, even if the weight was equal. Right? That's how it was. It's not. That's how it was. Fast wheel changes. No more bike swaps and nonsense. Secondly, is more consistent braking with rim brakes. It's safer on the downhills. Your calipers don't overheat. No pro World Tour rider overcooks a carbon rim. You saw it back in the Charlotte's Pass, whatever it was, Utah Pass, Dead Man's Pass, what it was, Tour Utah back in the day. That rider, I forget his name, there's an Envy prototype rim with prototype brake pads. You know what I mean? Like, that's never happened ever since, again, that was just such bad publicity. So, you never see World Tour riders failing carbon rims in a descent because they hardly use their brakes. They just barely use them, all right? So that's the big one there. So less rotating mass. Disc brakes are less aero because there's more spokes. Bent rotors in the crash. You have a crash, someone bends your rotor just from the knee. It's just like ting, 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 ting. It's just no pro is going to choose disc brake bikes. So that's just given fact. That's a 100% given fact. After a few beers off the record, ask any World Tour rider. I've asked many. They all hate them, man. The mechanics hate disc brake bikes. Every single World Tour mechanic absolutely despises disc brake bikes. All right.
Here is that Pogacar could ride whatever he wants. He could ride rim brakes throughout the end.
Pogacar also gets paid a hefty bonus for riding disc brakes every stage. Same as Sagan back in 2019 when he rode the Tour de France. Can you guess how much money Specialized paid Sagan as a bonus for 100% of the Tour de France on discs? It was a very, very handsome sum. So Tadej has a choice, but he's also getting paid good money. When he's just sitting in the bunch in the peloton, I mean, I would take $100,000 a day for sure, or whatever. I'd take the bonus if I'm just rolling in the pack. It's all good, no stress. Yellow jersey's all good. I'd definitely take the money, if I was a pro rider like that. So, I mean, yeah, just saying. Just so people should be that should be. A lot of people don't understand that the pro riders who do have the option are getting paid a bonus when they do choose disc brakes.
Entire race, and Colnago would be fine by that. They just want him on a Colnago. But he's deliberately choosing disc brakes, and this is because it's not all about weight. If you put the 35mm lighter wheels in the disc brake bike, it's pretty darn close.
It's not darn close. It's 7.3 kilos. That's 500 grams. I mean, for some people that's pretty darn close, but for Ollie, who's a weight weenie, it's not close.
To 6.8 kilograms, but we understand that he's deliberately choosing disc brakes, particularly that stage 8 with the descent in the wet was a key example, because he wanted the superior braking power, as it wasn't a summit finish, and so weight's less important, and he wanted that key braking power to make sure he had an advantage over his rivals.
But what about mountaintop finishes?
Okay, so that point wasn't addressed. I'll address the point. Disc brakes at the World Tour level are not safe on the downhill. We've seen that in the wet, in the crashes last year in the Tour de France. We saw that in the Giro this year. Look at Egan. Who won the Giro this year? Egan Bernal won the Giro, a wet, semi-snowy. One of the stages was so wet that the television was cancelled. And all we see was Egan coming across the line in pink, just obliterating the peloton in the wet. Team Sky and Ineos controlling the peloton down the hill in the wet on lightweight carbon rims. Those Millenstone rims are crap house in the wet. But that just goes to show you, World Tour level, these guys are absolute freaks on the downhills in terms of brakes, okay? So it's not, he didn't choose it because of the advantage. That day, he had a great day. And then from then on, when it was an important day, rim brakes, because didn't want to lose any time from a bike swap. Do you know how much the logistics nightmare of getting a bike to him? It's just panic, unnecessary. But again, they hardly use the brakes in the downhills. Okay, you go ride the pro tours the pro riders like I have over the years. They just they're not even racing on the descent. They just cruise on the descents here in Adelaide, and it's just like, wow, this is these are descents I know really well, and they're some of the riders' first time ever, and they're just blasting down them. It's just in training and just talking, taking photos, taking selfies, taking jackets off. The skill set of some of these riders has to be seen to be believed.
Summit finishes where you could argue that if you were to suffer a puncture, a disc brake wheel change is slower than what a rim brake one is. So arguably, the rim brake is going to save you more time if you were to suffer a puncture or have some sort of mechanical problem. Yeah. Whereas on a rolling, sort of flatter stage, it's not quite such an issue, is it? So I guess it kind of boils down to the stage and the race tactics a little bit.
So it's almost not down to as much weight. There's other considerations playing in. Like you say, that is a reason why he's used rim brakes on those summit finishes.
That's why every pro would, if every pro had the choice, not paid bonuses, not forced to, every pro would run rim brakes road.
Onargo also provided Tadej Pogacar with a handful of little sort of trick and unique parts ready for the Tour de France because, like we said, he is a bit of a weight weenie and is really into the setup of his bike. So some of the parts that they've swapped out are to try and save weight, aren't they? In order to help him.
This Super 6 in this picture here, 7.6 kilo. 7.6 kilo for Super 6. That's heavier than the original Super 6 released back in 2008, was it? With SRAM Red. This is heavier. A 2021 Tour de France Super 6, 52 centimeter, or maybe it's 7.5 kilo, heavier than the 2008 Super 6 first gen. Crazy. That's insane.
Be able to use those 50mm wheels that he likes.
Yeah, so instead of using 35s, it means you can use 50s and still have a bike that's 6.8. Proper cool, these mods. Check these out.
So, instead of his normal cockpit setup, he's using the Data Alanera Light version, which saves 45 grams.
Yeah, that's cool. And his seat post.
So he's going with a faff of integrated bars, which are terrible if you have a crash, because the whole bar has to go in the bin. So say 45 grams, 45 grams, okay? Now you know the truth.
Has special screws on it that we understand they're a special alloy of steel that's lighter than titanium.
It's got something special, isn't it?
Lighter than titanium screws. Weight doesn't matter, durianrider. I think we'll just leave the video at this because I'm just going to be prattling on forever. If you do want to check out the video, go check out his on GCN Tech, July 23rd. Tadej won the Tour de France on disc brakes, ? So there you go. That's just the proof right there. It's great the GCN brought the discussion up. Fantastic. So the reason why I make these videos is because the noobs out there thinking, disc brakes is an upgrade. Disc brakes is not an upgrade unless you're racing cross-country mountain bike, unless you're commuting in London or doing Uber Eats in the wet and the cold and the snow and the slush, and you want you're running a fat tire, like at least a 40 or a 50mm tire. Running a 25mm tire with disc brakes in the wet and going fast, in my opinion, is very dangerous because that caliper is going to lock that rear wheel up and you're going to be slide city. You're going to be doing a Superman into the car, into something like what Superman did last year in the Tour de France. Anyway, that's the deal. I've prattled on a lot about this one. Wrap it up now. Every single World Tour rider doesn't like disc brakes at varying levels. Every single World Tour mechanic absolutely despises road disc brakes. These are truth bomb facts there. Well, they didn't say that on Instagram. People, there's sponsors out there, right? Chris Froome's video, that's sort of like his close as you're going to get for a World Tour rider to come out at a talk like that. But yeah, behind the scenes, man, they have to sort of respect the sponsors to a degree. But man, just go out there and buy a rim brake bike, top end disc brake bike, and ride both for a year and tell me what you think, and service costs and all that stuff. Carbon rims are super cheap now. You got a brand called Windspace. I'll sell them. Windspace Hyper 38 rim brake, incredible rim. As good, and actually better than my lightweights, better than my Envies, etc., because they're lighter or they're cheaper to fix, or they're better braking service, and a nice wide depth. They're fantastic, and they're like $1,000 US, something like that, $1,100 US, peanuts compared to what you're paying for these top brand name stuff, which aren't better. Okay, so if you're paying more than $200-300 for a carbon rim replacement, you're paying way too much, man. And these rims last a long time, assuming they don't crash in the back of a car. I've never ever wanted a carbon rim brake ever. Maybe it can happen. I don't know. Use the proper pads, people. Use proper pads. You don't use alloy pads on carbon rims. Please, people, don't do that. Anyway, that's the deal. That's the spin. I've done a few videos on this topic. Want more information? Hit me up down below.